That night, on the hotel rooftop overlooking Tampa Bay, the warm yellow lights hit the glasses like tiny blades. A man stood in the middle of a circle of lawyers in expensive suits, raised his bourbon, and sneered. Then he said a line that made the whole room explode with laughter, a line aimed at the husbands who grind and pay the bills so they could enjoy your wives. I laughed too. I nodded like it was just a harmless joke. But inside, something collapsed slowly, coldly, like concrete cracking before it gives way. I didn't shout, I didn't swing, I didn't make a scene. I just thought, when Monday comes, you'll learn exactly who you just humiliated. This isn't a fairy tale. This is one of those revenge stories people repeat as a lesson in arrogance, a wife's story that turns into real marriage drama. And me, a husband who thought he was protecting his family, walked into that night like an ordinary man, then walked out with the coldest vow of my life. My name is Dylan Hart. I'm 44. People look at me and assume I'm a pure job site guy, broad shoulders, calloused hands, and fingernails that still carry a bit of mortar dust even after a hard scrub. I don't argue. I like being underestimated. It lets me work in peace. I drive an F-150 with over 100,000 miles on it. No German car, no flashy watch. But my company, Harborline Development and Build, feeds more than 80 families in Tampa. I'm a millionaire in a quiet way. No bragging, no Instagram, just contracts, machines, schedules, and 3 a.m. calls because a pipe burst or a canopy collapsed after a storm. My wife, Olivia Hart, is 37. A corporate attorney at Bexley & Rowe LLP in downtown Tampa. Her world is glass, marble, and elevators that glide so smoothly they feel like they never touch the ground. She works in conference rooms so cold everyone keeps a thin jacket on, even in Florida summer. That night was a celebration for the promotion track. Not official partnership yet, not quite, but close enough that the office threw a party like she'd just won an Oscar. Olivia said it was an important stepping stone, and even more important than that was the image. "You have to be there," she told me early in the week, her voice sweet like honey. "Just show up. Smile. Stand next to me." I nodded, even though my Fridays usually smell like paint, engine oil, and a materials list as long as a hospital bill. I nodded because I still believed, foolish but real, that marriage means standing beside each other, even when you don't live in the same world. The hotel sat right by the water. From far off, you could already see the lights reflecting across the bay. The doorman opened our car door like he was opening a scene in a movie. I handed the keys to the valet. He looked at my F-150 like a fish had wandered into a jewelry store. I looked back and just nodded. I was used to it. The elevator climbed to the top. When the doors opened, the music washed over us. Soft jazz, expensive perfume, glasses clinking, laughter that sounded high and slick as glass. Olivia stepped out first. And just like I already knew, every head turned toward her. Not toward us, toward her, the black dress hugged in all the right places. Her hair fell over her shoulders. Small earrings, but bright. She looked like a promise, something people wanted to bet on. I stood beside her in a charcoal suit, a navy tie, hair trimmed clean, exactly the way she'd scheduled it. I looked fine, but fine here only meant I wouldn't ruin the frame. Olivia took my arm and squeezed lightly, not the intimate kind, the controlling kind. "Stay with me," she whispered. We moved through groups of people. I heard words from their world: compliance, merger, litigation, client retention. Things I only half understood, like listening to rain through glass. I answered with the right smiles, the right nods, the role I'd been playing for too long. Then I met Grant Weller. 33, a junior partner, the kind of man who was a decade younger than me but walked like the whole building belonged to him. A tailored suit, a half smile, eyes sharp, not warm. He shook my hand and squeezed harder than necessary, like he was proving something nobody asked. Dylan Hart, he read my name like a line in a contract. I've heard a lot about you. Olivia says you're very busy. I do construction, I said, always busy. Grant smiled, the kind that never reached his eyes. That's good. Someone has to pay the bills so we can focus on bigger things. Olivia laughed with him, a little too loud, then she touched Grant's arm, quick, like a habit. I saw it. I said nothing. In my head, a small scene flashed, a moment I would have ignored on any other night, but I couldn't ignore it then. Some nights, a construction man's instincts work like a pressure gauge. It can feel where the foundation is about to crack. Grant leaned in and said something into Olivia's ear. She leaned in too. They both laughed, an inside joke, a private world. And I stood right there, still shut out. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Just co-workers, just a party, don't make it bigger. But about an hour later, I saw Grant lift his bourbon and scan the room like he was checking his stage. I hadn't heard the cruelest line of my life yet, but I'd already seen the way he looked at me, like I was a hired hand who'd put on the wrong suit. And in that moment, I understood something cold. Tonight wasn't about celebrating Olivia. Tonight was about confirming power. And if I wasn't careful, I was going to become the punchline in their story. Olivia pulled me along and introduced me to a few more people. I kept smiling, I kept nodding. But under that smile, one thought ran straight and silent like a cut line. If they wanted to turn me into a prop, they were about to learn that a prop can still become the man holding the hammer. And while the music kept playing, while the glasses kept clinking, I stood beside my wife like the perfect husband. Only from that moment on, I started counting. Counting looks, counting minutes, counting every sign. Because I had a very clear feeling tonight was just the opener. Monday was when the real story would begin. I'm the kind of man who believes in systems. Not because I love controlling everything, but because I've watched too many things collapse when people work off emotion. In construction, emotion doesn't hold a roof when the wind hits. Only the right structure does. My day always starts the same way. I'm up before the sun is fully up. Black coffee, no sugar. I sit still for a few minutes and run the schedule through my head before I even unlock my phone. I've had that habit for years. It keeps me entering the day with order. I get to the office before most of my crew, not to check on them, just to make sure everything runs the way it did yesterday. Emails to answer, contracts to review, materials reports, job schedules. I don't work off hunches, I work off data. If a number doesn't match, I stop. If a task has risk, I adjust. Nobody likes me when I make them redo something, but they trust me, because they know I don't let small details slide. Harbor Line didn't grow on luck. It grew because there's no room for sloppy work. I believed life ran by the same principle. If you work hard enough, you get results. If you keep your word, people respect you. If you play by the rules protect you. That belief wasn't some lofty philosophy. It was just what let me live without suspecting everything around me. I brought the same logic home. I didn't check my wife's phone. I didn't ask where she went, who she met, what time she'd be back. Not because I didn't care, but because I believed a healthy relationship doesn't need surveillance. We had our own schedules, our own work. I believed if two adults handled their part, the shared part would hold. I wasn't the kind of man who needed constant reassurance. I didn't need compliments. I just needed to know things were moving in the right direction, and for a long time I believed they were. Work was steady, money came in, projects stayed on track. No scandals, no lawsuits, no major shocks. That's the state I like most. The state where you don't react, you maintain. On paper, I was a millionaire, but I never thought about money the way most people do. To me, it was fuel, enough to keep the machine running, nothing to show off. I never needed to prove who I was. I thought the results spoke for themselves. Some afternoons I'd stand at a site watching my crew work and feel a strange kind of calm. Not happiness, not pride. Just the sense that things were where they needed to be. I believed marriage should be like that too. No noise, no drama, no daily performances. Just smooth operation. Maybe that was my mistake. But at the time, I had no idea. I thought I'd built enough foundation not to worry. I thought the same principles that carried me in business would hold my personal life. I believed in order. I believed in discipline. I believed that if I didn't break the rules wouldn't turn on me. I didn't know there are parts of life that don't follow the same system. And I definitely didn't know that belief, that absolute comfort, would become my biggest blind spot. But back then, I still thought I was standing on solid ground. Very solid. We didn't fight, and that was exactly what kept me relaxed for a long time. Mornings in our house still ran smooth. Olivia woke up a little earlier than I did. She made coffee with the machine, not the black coffee I drank. Different smell, lighter, a hint of vanilla. I'd stand in the kitchen and skim emails while she checked her day on her phone. "I've got a meeting at 9, she'd say, eyes still on the screen. "I'm heading to the south site," I'd answer. We exchanged information like coordinators. No extra questions. No long explanations. It sounded fine. And for a long time, I thought it was fine. Olivia started coming home later, but she always warned me. Short texts. On time. Nothing suspicious. I got used to eating alone or reheating dinner. I didn't take it personally. My work had seasons like that too. But there were small details I didn't log right away. She stopped telling me stories about her day. Not because there were no stories, but because it felt like she didn't need to tell me anymore. Conversations turned into brief reports. Clean. Complete. No emotion. When I asked, "How was your day?" she'd say, "Fine, busy," and it ended there. Her laptop stayed open even during dinner. Her phone sat face down on the table. Not like she was hiding it, more like muscle memory. I didn't ask. I trusted space. On weekends, I was often at a site or the warehouse. Olivia stayed home more, but she wasn't really there. She sat on the couch with her laptop, earbuds in. Once, I suggested we go out to dinner. "Not this week," she said. "I need to prep for a few things." I didn't push. We still slept in the same bed, but her sleep was lighter. Her phone stayed close to her pillow. Some nights the screen lit up near midnight. I'd turn, she'd shut it off fast. "Just email," she'd say. I believed her. In my mind, marriage didn't need noise to be stable. I believed 2 grown people could share a life without clinging. I believed silence was a sign of stability, but that silence got thicker. There were dinners where we sat across from each other and didn't say much. Not because we were angry, because nothing felt necessary to say. I told myself that was normal after years together. Still, I started feeling like I wasn't at the center of her priorities anymore. Not pushed out, just sliding out. One night, she reminded me about an upcoming event. Her tone was polite, almost professional. "Make sure you clear your time," she said. "You don't have to stay long. Just show up. Not I want you there." It was, "I need you to appear." I put it on my calendar like everything else. There's one tiny moment I remember clearly. I was correcting a drawing at the dining table. Olivia walked by, stopped for a second, glanced at it. "You still do it the old way?" she asked. "Yeah? Then she kept walking. Not criticism, not praise, just a casual check-in. But it made me realize we were looking at the world through 2 different lenses. In my world, value is whether something works. In hers, value is how it looks to other people. 2 systems, still running side by side, but crossing less and less. I didn't call it a problem. I told myself every marriage has adjustment phases. I believed no conflict meant everything was under control. I was used to solving problems when they showed up loud and clear. Here, there was no clear problem. Only a vague feeling that I lived in the same house but wasn't at its center anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't mad. Just slightly out of rhythm. And because I believed in order, I believed if something was wrong, It would reveal itself. I didn't know some things don't fall apart with a loud warning. They fall apart in silence. Change didn't arrive like an alarm. It arrived like background noise, light, scattered. Easy to miss if you weren't trained to notice. I started noticing it in ordinary moments. Olivia shifted her schedule without warning. Not big shifts, just small ones. Leaving a bit earlier, coming home a bit later, 15 or 20-minute drifts. I didn't write them down, but my body registered them. She bought a new perfume. Not the one I could recognize even from across the room. This one was sharper, more assertive, like a statement. "You changed it?" I asked. "Yeah," she said. "It fits the environment better. No extra explanation." She started paying more attention to her appearance on days that didn't obviously require it. Picking a dress carefully, changing shoes twice, standing at the mirror longer. I didn't think that was bad. Everyone has the right to feel good, but I noticed this: she stopped asking what I thought. Before, even when she was busy, she'd still ask a simple question: "Do I look okay?" Not for my approval, just to include me. That question disappeared without me knowing when. Her messages changed too. Still on time, still polite, but less detail, less warmth. Like they were written to complete a notification duty, not to share. Some nights I heard her laugh in her office. Real laugh, not the polite one. I walked past, and she looked up. The smile faded too fast. "Something funny?" I asked. "Oh, no," she said, "just an email." I nodded and kept moving. Part of me registered the mismatch. The other part pushed it away. I hated suspicion without proof. In my head, if there was no clear evidence, there was no problem. But signs never show up alone. They show up in clusters. That weekend, I suggested visiting an old friend in St. Pete. Olivia said no. Reasonable excuse, she needed to prep for the week. I didn't insist. But that night, when I came home later than usual, the office light was on, and Olivia wasn't there. Her phone sat on the kitchen counter. Silent. She came home almost an hour after me. Calm, not rushed. Just said she went out for a bit of air. I didn't ask where. I didn't ask with who. Not because I didn't care, but because I believed asking those questions without a reason only creates doubt. In business, my rule is, don't conclude until the data is enough. I brought that rule home. What I didn't account for is emotional data doesn't behave like job site numbers. One morning, her phone buzzed while she was in the shower. The name didn't show fully, just an initial. I didn't look closer, I didn't pick it up. When she came out, she glanced at the counter and took the phone right away. That reflex was faster than normal, like a move she'd practiced. I told myself I was overreading. I hated that feeling. Suspicion without certainty, like betraying my own way of living. I've always trusted clarity. This wasn't clear. So I started doing something small. Not tracking, not checking, just remembering. The time she left, the time she came home. The days she seemed tense. The days she seemed lighter. I didn't write it down. I just kept the markers in my head. And what confused me most was this. Her best moods didn't seem to have anything to do with me. Not because I needed to be the center, but because I used to be part of that. Now, I wasn't. We still talked, still lived together, still didn't fight. Everything on the surface looked fine, but under the surface another current was forming. Slow, quiet, no sound. I didn't know where it led. I didn't force an answer then. I only knew that for the first time in years, the system I believed was running smoothly was showing tiny errors. And from my experience, tiny errors ignored long enough don't disappear. They wait for the right moment to multiply. I didn't change how I acted. That mattered. If you act different on a hunch, you turn into a paranoid man. I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted my thoughts to be grounded in something real, not something my mind invented. But my body didn't lie. Some nights, I sat in the living room pretending to read, while my ears tracked every sound in the house. Not to catch her, just to understand the rhythm. Footsteps, doors, the silence between messages. Olivia started taking more calls, but never in front of me. She stepped onto the balcony or into her office, voice lowered. When she came back, she looked normal. Not nervous, not tense. That was what bothered me. If she was tense, I could ask. If she was awkward, I could see it. But nothing, too smooth. One night, I asked casually, "Which team are you working with lately?" She answered instantly, no hesitation, "Litigation team, same as before." Correct answer, but too perfect. Not a single extra detail, like it had been prepared. I didn't ask more. I started feeling like I lived in two timelines, one made of what was said, the other made of what wasn't. Once, I came home earlier than expected. Olivia's car was in the garage. I was surprised, but inside the house, she wasn't there. No laptop in her office, no bag where she always left it. I called her name, no answer. 10 minutes later, she came home and said she'd taken a walk to clear her head. I nodded. I didn't push, but a small question appeared: why explain if no one asked? I hated that question. I shoved it down. We still ate dinner together. We still talked about safe topics, work, weather, weekend plans, topics with no risk. But there was a space between us nobody touched, like a restricted zone we both avoided. I didn't hunt for proof. I didn't follow. I didn't check her phone. I kept living the same way, only I observed differently. Not to jump to the worst, but to see what didn't match. When Olivia came home late, she didn't look exhausted like before. Sometimes she looked lighter, like she'd set something down. Late messages still came, very late after 11. She didn't reply right away, but the next morning she'd be in a better mood. I didn't connect the dots out loud, I just let them sit. In business, when the data isn't enough, you don't act. You wait. Errors repeat if they're real, and they repeated. Another time, I asked her to have lunch on Friday. She said a last-minute meeting came up. I didn't argue, but that night she repeated the story with unnecessary details. Time, place, reason. Too much information for something that didn't matter. I started understanding that when people hide something, they either say too little or too much. Olivia was leaning into too much. I wasn't angry, I wasn't heartbroken. I just felt like I was approaching a turn I couldn't see around. One morning after she left, I stood in the house for a long time, doing nothing, listening to the quiet. This house used to have its own rhythm. Now it was slightly off, almost unnoticeable. But I noticed. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't vent. I didn't want to spread suspicion when I wasn't certain. I only gave myself a new rule. Don't pretend things are fine when they aren't the same anymore. No conclusion yet, no proof yet, no action yet. Just one small truth I couldn't deny. My trust, the thing that used to feel solid, had started showing the first scratches, and even though I didn't know where it would lead, I knew I couldn't keep ignoring it. That night, I prepared myself for a social event, nothing more. Olivia said it was important: partners, bosses, people she needed to impress. I listened, nodded, and put on the suit I rarely wore. Not because I belonged in rooms like that, but because I understood the rule: when someone needs you to show up, you show up in the right role. The place was a rooftop bar overlooking the bay. Light wind, golden lights. Music, low enough that people had to stand close to talk. A space designed to feel intimate without anyone taking responsibility for it. We arrived on time. Olivia stepped in first, like always. I followed half a step behind, not because I was slow, but because that was the position I'd learned to stand in. She blended into a group right away. I shook hands, nodded, smiled at the right moments. Conversations flowed like water. I didn't remember names, I didn't need to, I just needed to not ruin the picture. Grant Weller was there early. I saw him before Olivia did. He stood at the bar with a whiskey, laughing louder than necessary. When he noticed us, he lifted his glass. His eyes lingered on Olivia longer than normal. I didn't react. The night moved on like that. Work talk, empty compliments. accidental touches when people stood too close. I watched, not labeling it as a problem, just logging it as data, until Grant was invited to speak. Not a formal speech, just a few words for fun. A man holding a microphone because he'd drank enough to think he was entertaining. He stood in the middle of the crowd, light on his face, whiskey in his hand, voice rougher from alcohol. "We should raise a glass," he said with a half grin, "to the hard-working husbands out there." A few laughs. I stayed still. Grant went on, louder, more confident. "The husbands who grind and pay the bills so we can enjoy your wives." The line dropped into the room like a weight, not because it was new, but because it was said out loud. Laughter burst. Some people looked away, some pretended they didn't hear. Nobody stopped him. I stood there. I didn't move. Olivia was right beside me. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. I felt her silence more clearly than any words. No frown. No hand to cut him off. No enough. She just took a sip like she was waiting for it to pass. In that moment, I understood something sharp. Humiliation doesn't have to be aimed directly at you to land. Grant didn't say my name. He didn't have to. The room did the rest. I smiled, a polite smile. Enough that nobody thought I was offended. Enough to keep the mood intact. But inside, a line was drawn. Not by rage, not by shame, but by cold clarity. I've walked through dangerous sites my whole life. I know when a structure isn't safe anymore. And in that moment, I knew the thing I was standing on wasn't marriage. It was a stage. The night continued. Grant laughed. Others laughed. Drinks kept coming. Olivia talked with people in that smooth, professional way, like nothing had happened. We left not long after. In the car, neither of us spoke. Not because we were tense, because there was nothing left to say. When we got home, Olivia went straight to the shower. I went into my office. I didn't shut the door. I didn't turn on music. I just sat down. I wasn't angry, and that surprised me. Instead, I felt something familiar, the feeling of a man realizing the rules changed, and he was the last one to be told. I used to believe silence meant stability, that not fighting was good, that respect would exist if nobody broke it. Tonight, I learned the opposite. Some silences aren't peace. They're agreement. And when someone stands still while you're being humiliated, they've made their choice. I sat there a long time. I didn't plan far ahead. I just let one thought sit in plain view. If this is how they play, then from now on, I'm not standing on their stage anymore, because there are lines that once crossed can't be redrawn with words. I didn't fall asleep right away that night, not because my mind was spinning, but because I needed absolute quiet. Sometimes silence isn't for rest. It's a tool. The shower still ran. Olivia always took long showers after nights like that. I knew her rhythm well enough not to check the time. I sat in my office with the desk lamp low, everything around me still. I didn't have a plan yet, not yet. I only had one very specific question. Was I being treated like a husband or like a variable? That question led me to the iPad on the shelf. A shared device. We used it for news, books, notes. The password had never changed, not from carelessness, but because we used to believe we didn't need to. I didn't touch it right away. I sat for a few more minutes to make sure this wasn't impulse. I hate decisions born from emotion. Then I unlocked it. The messaging app opened. A long list, friends, co-workers, family, and a name I didn't have to search for. Grant. I didn't open it right away. I took a breath, not deep, not dramatic, just enough to keep my hand steady. The first message I saw wasn't anything explicit, no flirting, no dirty words. Just a clean question. Is the cash flow still solid? The reply came minutes later, solid, at least for the next few quarters. I kept scrolling, not fast, not slow. I read like I was reading a report. They weren't talking about feelings, not desire, not love. They were talking about timing, advantage, risk. One line made me stop. Wait until the port project locks in. Don't rush. I knew that project. I'd talked about it at home. Not in detail, but enough to show its weight. I kept going. No sweet promises. Just lines like two people negotiating a deal. How do we split it clean? Be careful with the paperwork. Don't let him suspect too soon. Him. Not husband, not Dylan, just him. I didn't feel pain. That was the strangest part. I only felt clarity. I backed out of the messages and opened documents. A file with a neutral name, like it didn't need hiding. Inside was a spreadsheet. Asset overview, DH. I didn't have to read it all to understand, but I read it anyway, line by line, number by number. House, estimated value. Company, ownership percentage. Equipment, depreciation. Accounts, balances, no mistakes, no exaggeration, no emotion, a perfect analysis, cold, precise, without a name. In the notes column were short lines, favorable timing, low risk if we wait longer, maintain image. I closed that file and opened the next. A voice memo. Olivia's voice, clear, calm, like she was practicing in a mirror. Dylan has been distant lately. I feel neglected in this marriage. I tried, but maybe we need time apart. She stopped, then said it again, adjusting her tone, adjusting the pacing. No tears, no shaking, just a script being polished smooth. That's when I truly understood. This wasn't an affair that got out of control. This was a plan. I wasn't betrayed because someone fell for the wrong person. I was a line in their math. I didn't close the iPad. I took screenshots of everything, the messages, the files, the memo. I saved them in a new folder. I didn't name it with emotion. Just one word, ledger. I heard the water stop. I placed the iPad back exactly where it was, same angle, same spot, no trace. Olivia walked out with wet hair and a robe. She looked at me. "You still up?" she asked. "Not yet," I said, finishing a few things. She nodded, no suspicion, no questions, and went to the bedroom. I stayed alone. The emotions that should have come didn't. Rage, heartbreak, betrayal, they weren't there. Only a cold focus. I've spent my life building things that stand, and now I knew I was looking at a structure that had been hollowed from the inside. I hadn't done anything yet. No confrontation, no questions, no reaction. Because in any serious job, truth is only step one, and I had just completed that step. The next morning I woke up like I always do. Not later, not earlier. I kept my rhythm because changing your rhythm is the fastest way to show your hand. Olivia left before me. She kissed my cheek lightly, like a routine performed on schedule. I nodded and wished her a good day. Nothing in my voice changed. I made sure of it. After the door closed, I stood still for a few seconds. Not thinking, not rehearsing, just letting the house return to empty. I needed that quiet to do what came next. I didn't rush into action. I hate reactions that aren't prepared. What I saw last night was real, but truth only matters when it holds under light. I needed more than certainty. I needed structure. First, I backed everything up. Not on one device, 3 places, an external drive, a private cloud, an encrypted USB. I placed them in 3 different locations. Not paranoia, practice. Then I opened my laptop and reviewed the company's financial history. Not to find mistakes, but to confirm one thing: nothing in those files was guesswork. They knew the numbers, and they could only know if someone had listened closely. I didn't get angry. I logged it. At noon, I called my friend Noah Briggs. We knew each other from before he ran private security. From before that, we came from a world where you learn to observe without leaving a trace. "I need you to do something," I said. He answered, "I can tell by your voice it's not small. I need public information, schedules, visible relationships, no illegal tracking. No breaking in, no crossing lines." Noah paused. "Sounds personal." "It is," I said, "but I need it clean." "Give me the name," he said. I did, no extra explanation. After I hung up, I didn't sit around waiting. I worked my normal day. Crew check-ins, approvals. A small issue on the east site. I kept myself busy because busy keeps my mind from spiraling. But I did one thing differently. I started logging. Not tracking, not spying, just logging what was already there. The times Olivia left, the times she came home, the nights she said she ate out, the days she came home early without reason. I didn't ask, I watched. I also remembered a detail I used to consider harmless, the location app we installed years ago for safety. We almost never used it, and because of that, I opened it without feeling like I was doing something wrong. Olivia's blue dot wasn't at the office when it should have been. It was in another part of the city, near the water. A luxury building I recognized because we'd once done a small renovation nearby. I didn't stare, I closed it. I didn't need more at that moment. I only needed to know last night wasn't random. That afternoon I received an email with no clear sender name. Short, cold. I can't get involved directly, but there are files about you saved in the team's shared folder. They shouldn't exist. No attachment, no signature. Just one last line. Be careful. I read it twice and saved it. I didn't reply. I didn't trace it. I didn't want to put someone at risk. But it confirmed something important. I wasn't the only one who saw how wrong this was. That night, Olivia came home late. She looked tired but not stressed. I asked about dinner. She said she'd already eaten. I nodded. We watched TV, a show neither of us really followed. I felt the distance clearer than ever. Not physical distance, the distance of two people carrying different secrets. Before bed, my phone buzzed. A message from Noah. You're right, there's something here, but not enough yet. Give me more time, I replied. I'm not in a hurry. And it was true. I was past reacting. I was collecting. A stage where every step has to be solid, clean, and unbreakable. In construction, when you're about to dismantle a big structure, you don't smash first. You mark. You brace. You make sure when it falls the way you want. I lay down, turned my back to Olivia, and closed my eyes. For the first time since that night, I slept. Not because I forgot, because I knew I was doing what I had to do. I didn't hire a lawyer the first day, not because I hesitated, but because I needed to know what stage I was in. Some problems you solve with emotion, some with force, and some, the serious ones, you solve only with legal structure. This was the third kind. I chose Vivian Crossland for a simple reason. She doesn't talk much, and when she does, she asks the right questions. Her office was in an older building, not like the big downtown firms. No sparkling glass, no white marble lobby, just quiet halls and the smell of old paper. I liked it. Places like that usually do real work. Vivian didn't ask how I felt. She asked what I brought. I placed the drive on her desk. I didn't explain first. I waited until she opened it. The room stayed silent for almost 20 minutes. Vivian read, listened, watched. No immediate notes, no interruptions. I sat still, hands on my thighs like I was waiting for test results. Finally, she looked up. This isn't an impulsive affair, she said. This is a plan. I nodded, I knew, but hearing it named out loud put it in its place. She turned the screen and pointed at the spreadsheet. This asset overview was built carefully, not for reference, for action. She clicked the audio memo and listened again, then paused. She's rehearsing a narrative, Vivian said. A story to use when needed. I asked one question. Where do I stand? Vivian didn't answer right away. She leaned back and folded her arms. In the marriage, she said, you're in a strong position. Not because you're right, but because they left trails, and they left them too early. She opened another document, the contract between Harbor Line and Bexley and Rowe. This, Vivian said, is the real leverage. The termination clause for conduct harmful to the business relationship. A clause I used to treat as standard. Now it looked like an arrow. You don't need to sue, Vivian said. You don't need threats. You just need to notify. She explained it cleanly. If Harbor Line pulled out of the firm's daily operations, maintenance, upgrades, security, infrastructure, Bexley and Rowe would go into chaos immediately. Not because they lacked money, but because they couldn't replace it fast. But, she added, you do that only when everything else is ready. I understood. This wasn't the moment to strike. This was the moment to arrange pieces. Vivian asked what I wanted. Not how badly I wanted them to hurt, but where I wanted this to end. I want it clean, I said. I don't want a long war. I want them to understand consequences, then stop. She nodded. Then you need two things, timing and order. We talked about schedule, service of papers, making sure nothing could be misread as extortion or personal revenge. Vivian was strict on that. Everything had to hold if examined. Don't react, she said. Only execute. I left her office with a thin folder. No long speech, just checkpoints, conditions, if-then scenarios. On the drive home, I didn't play music. I thought about the one line Vivian said that stuck. You're in a strong position, not because you're smarter than them, but because you're more patient. That night, I came home like normal. Olivia asked how my day was. I said fine. She nodded. We ate. We talked about weather. Nothing changed on the surface, but I didn't look at her the same. Not with suspicion, with distance. The distance a man needs when he's about to finish something hard. When we went to bed, I turned away. Not to punish, to focus. I'd moved past investigation, past confirmation, into the stage where every action carries weight. In construction, this is the moment before you issue the deployment order, the moment everything has been checked, and you know, once it starts, there is no turning back. I closed my eyes and let my breathing slow. Tomorrow, I wouldn't prepare more. Tomorrow, I would just wait for the right moment. I arrived at the office 15 minutes earlier than usual. Not because I needed extra time, but because I wanted everything to start on schedule. Kendra was already there. She looked at me when I walked in, then paused for a fraction of a second. People who've worked with me long enough notice small shifts, but she didn't ask. She just nodded. If any calls come in from Bexley and Rowe, I said, setting my bag down, send them all to Vivian unless I say otherwise. Yes, she said. No questions. I sat down, opened my computer and checked the documents one last time. Not to edit, just to confirm everything was in place. At exactly 8:15, I left. I drove slower than usual, no rush, no hurry. I wanted my heart rate steady. Over the years, I learned the most important moment isn't the action. It's walking into the room. Bexley and Rowe sat in a tall glass building. Big lobby, white, quiet, everything designed to feel like power and control. I walked in through the front door, not the contractor entrance, no warning. The receptionist looked up. I said my name. Clear, calm, no long explanation. I need to see senior management. Urgent. She hesitated for a second, then made the call. I stood still, didn't look around, didn't check my phone. I let them handle it. The conference room upstairs was all glass, the bay spread out below. I sat down, set my bag on the table, and waited. Two men walked in almost together. Senior leadership, I knew them. Not close, not strangers. Men used to making decisions and not used to being cornered. Dylan, one said carefully, what is this about? I didn't lean back. I sat straight. I'm here to inform you, I said. Harbor Line is terminating all service agreements with Bexley and Rowe, effective immediately. Silence. The other man started to speak. I lifted a hand, small. Before you say anything, I continued, I want you to read this clause. I slid the contract across. The page was marked. No highlighting, no extra notes. Termination for conduct detrimental to the business relationship. They read. I didn't talk. We have a long-term contract, the first man said, trying to stay calm. Notice requirements. You can't just... I can, I cut in. Not loud, not icy, certain, and I am. I placed a thin folder on the table. Not everything, just enough. Misuse of my company's financial information for personal purposes, conflict of interest, and public humiliation that damages my standing, all of that falls under detrimental conduct. They flipped pages. Slow. Controlled. Who are you accusing? One asked. I'm naming Grant Weller, I said, and I'm saying this ends today. The other man leaned back, exhaled. "Those are serious accusations." "These aren't accusations," I said. "These are facts." I stood. "You have two options," I said. "Handle this internally right now, or Harbor Line pulls completely out of your operations before noon. No maintenance, no emergency support, no exceptions." A long pause. "That sounds like coercion," the other man said. "I'm not asking for anything," I replied. "I'm notifying you. You choose how you respond." I turned to leave, then stopped for a beat. "One more thing," I said without turning back. "I expect Olivia to be here today. She should hear this from you, not from me." I walked out. I didn't wait. Down in the lobby, I went outside and sat in my truck. I didn't start it. I waited. At 8:45, I saw a man in a suit burst out of the building, phone to his ear, face red, pacing hard. At 9 sharp, a black vehicle pulled up. 2 men in suits got out and went straight inside. At 9:05, Grant Weller appeared at the glass doors. No smile, no confidence, a cardboard box in his arms. Bigger than I expected, big enough to clear an office. He didn't look around. He didn't look up. He walked straight out. When he passed my truck, he paused for a second. I don't know if he recognized me. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. At 10, my phone buzzed. A text from Vivian. "It's done. Papers are being delivered." I started the truck and drove away. No victory rush, no excitement, just a familiar quiet. In business, there are days you don't build anything new. You just remove what no longer belongs in the structure. And when you do it right, what remained stands stronger. I knew it wasn't over, but the hardest part was done. From here on, it would be consequences, one after another. I didn't go home right after leaving that building. Not because I was afraid to face it, but because I knew from that moment on every reaction would be watched. And I wasn't giving anyone extra emotional data to analyze. I stopped at a small coffee shop a few blocks away, sat by the window, ordered black, no sugar. I placed my phone face down on the table. I didn't need to look to know it would ring. 10 minutes, 20, 30. The first call came from Olivia. I let it ring out. Not out of anger, but because I told Vivian I wouldn't have private conversations from now on. The second call came right after. Then a text. Then another call. I didn't read. I didn't listen. I just turned the phone back face down. An hour later, a message from Vivian. Papers were delivered at the office right during peak traffic. Olivia was called into HR. I took a sip of coffee. Bitter, familiar, steady. I could picture it without being there, a thick envelope, a line read in the right tone. Curious eyes that weren't allowed to show curiosity. A moment nobody could turn into a scene. That's why I chose it, not to humiliate her, to freeze the drama. My phone buzzed again. A number I didn't recognize. I knew who it was. I didn't answer. A voicemail came in. I didn't listen right away. I waited until I was ready. Olivia's voice, no longer controlled. "Dylan, what is this?" "I don't understand. Why are there papers? I'm at the office. Everyone is looking." Her voice caught, then rose. "What are you doing? You can't do this. You're ruining everything." I stopped it, not because I hadn't heard enough, because I'd heard enough. By early afternoon, I had 17 missed calls, 3 voicemails, 5 texts. I didn't reply to any of them. Not because I didn't feel anything, because this conversation wasn't emotional anymore. Around 2, Noah texted, "Their day is going very bad." I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. I left the coffee shop and drove to the hotel I'd booked ahead of time. Not because I didn't have a home, but because I needed neutral ground, a place with no shared memories in the walls. When I finished checking in, Olivia showed up in the lobby. She looked different. Makeup smeared, hair messy, eyes unsure. People glanced and looked away fast. Nobody wanted to be near a forming storm. "We need to talk," she said, urgent. I looked at her. "Calm. Not here," I said. "Not now. You can't do this," she said louder. Then realized people were watching. She dropped her voice. You don't understand what's happening." "I understand perfectly," I said, not loud, not cold, clear, "and from now on, everything goes through the proper process." She looked at me like I was someone else. Maybe to her I was. "You're punishing me," she said. "Over a mistake." I shook my head. "No," I said. "You ruined everything when you turned our vows into a joke and our marriage into a business plan with an exit strategy." She tried to defend herself with excuses. I stood. "I wanted a partner, not a parasite. We're finished." She tried to grab my arm. I gently pulled away. "Dylan, please, we can fix this. I'll do anything, anything." I faced her. "You'd do anything except be honest from the start. You'd do anything except treat me like a partner instead of an ATM. You'd do anything. And now none of it matters." I walked toward the elevator. "Goodbye, Olivia." The next months weren't dramatic. They were paperwork. A signature here, a signature there, disclosures, asset lists, meetings with Vivian where everything was numbers, not emotion. But behind the quiet legal process, the real fallout was happening. Grant broke first. Fired from Bexley and Rowe, he got hit by a quiet blacklist in the Tampa legal scene. He tried other firms, but interviews ended after reference calls. The circle was smaller than people think, and the right people made sure he couldn't land where he wanted. Eventually, he took a job at a small clinic outside the city, handling minor claims instead of major corporate work. The arrogance drained out of him fast. Olivia's downfall was slower, but steady. The internal review lasted weeks. When it ended, she was given a choice: resign quietly or face formal action that would become public. She resigned. She tried to find work at the same level, but the rumors moved faster than resumes. In the end, she relocated, took a job that paid the bills but didn't come with prestige or a track to the top. No name waiting on a glass door. Just another mid-level corporate attorney. I signed the final decree on a Tuesday, walked out of the courthouse, and took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, the air didn't feel stale. I moved into a new place downtown. Modern, clean, no shared memories in the walls. I filled it with work, and Harbor Line grew stronger than ever. A year later, I got an unexpected call. One of the firm's senior partners. His voice sounded older, tired. "Dylan," he said, "I know this is strange, but we should talk." We met at a neutral restaurant downtown. "What do you want?" I asked. He sighed. "I came to apologize. We handled it wrong. Losing your contract nearly wrecked us. We lost clients, we lost credibility. What took decades to build got damaged in months." He paused. "We deserved it. And you did what you had to do to protect your business and your dignity. Then why meet me?" I asked. "Because I want you to know we learned. And we'd like to start over." I held his gaze. "I appreciate the honesty," I said, my voice cool. "But I don't need your firm anymore. I have new clients, new projects, and a new life. Sometimes the best business decision is knowing when to walk away." He nodded, not surprised. As we parted, he said one last thing. "We forgot that part. We thought you needed us more than we needed you. We were wrong." I didn't answer. I just nodded and walked away. Months after the divorce finalized, I attended a construction conference in Houston. I was in the ballroom, name, badge on, coffee in hand, when I saw her. Olivia. She walked with a small group near the back. No designer power suit this time. Still professional, still polished, but toned down. Her shoulders weren't as squared. Her eyes scanned the room like she wasn't sure where she belonged anymore. Our eyes met. For a second, we froze. She broke away from her group and came over. "Hi, Dylan," she said softly. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Yeah," I said, "expanding the business. Houston is a growth market." We did the small talk. Then she asked, "Do you ever think about us?" I let it sit. "I think about what we had," I said. "I'm not sure it was ever as real as I believed." Her face flickered. Regret. She looked down at her hands, then back up, letting her guard drop for the first time since everything broke. "I was a fool," she said quietly. "I let the title and the status get into my head. Grant fed that. I let ego drive." She swallowed. "What I did is unforgivable." "I know," she said. "I'm sorry, Dylan, truly sorry." I studied her face. I'd seen enough. I didn't wait for more. I turned and walked away. 2 years later, I can honestly say my life is better than it was before it all blew up. Harborline is stronger. I'm smarter. I'm more successful. As for Olivia and Grant, I hear updates sometimes. Olivia is still working quietly, keeping a low profile. Grant hasn't been able to keep steady work. His LinkedIn shows a string of short-term jobs over the past 2 years. Once your reputation is gone, it's hard to rebuild. I don't take joy in their struggle. I don't forgive them either. They belong to a chapter of my life that's closed. I moved on and built something better. Grant Weller thought he was clever that night on the rooftop. He thought he was humiliating me, showing the room who had the real power. He was wrong. He gave me the final push to do what I should have done, protect what I built, then build something better. When he raised that bourbon and thought he was toasting a victory, he was really toasting his own destruction. If you made it to the end of this story, take a second and think, if you were in my place, would you stay silent and keep taking it, or would you stand up and protect your own value? Drop a comment and tell me what you would have done. I read every one. If this hit close to home, tap like so I know you're here. And if you want more stories like this, raw, dramatic, and never sugar-coated, hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.